Yo, buddy.
David Lee. Hold on a second here. How do I do this?
Can you hear me? I
One
can hear
second here.
I can hear you perfectly well.
Dude, it's so crazy to see your face and hear your voice at the same time. It's always just like while I'm driving and listening to the podcast and stuff. This is a nice change.
Isn't it weird?
It's so weird, man. I was like, yeah, I've been nervous all day.
No way.
Yeah, dude, it's like talking to a surf celeb. You guys are doing well. It's awesome.
It makes me laugh to hear that. Number one, there's no need to be nervous whatsoever.
Yeah.
The idea of being a surf celeb is comical to me.
Yeah.
But what I do appreciate about it is, like, I grew up certainly, if not venerating, I don't know, photographers, pro surfers, writers, all that sort of stuff. I at least knew their names because of the magazines and just seeing the name maybe in print. And it's cool that now, like, there's such an interconnectedness between us all, you know, and it's like, I've known your work for a long
crazy.
But it's like, because I've known your work for a long time, I feel like we can just turn on the camera and be friends already because
Absolutely.
I know your work, you know my work. So there's no awkwardness or getting to know you phase. It's just
Totally.
an automatic familiarity.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
And we're into the same stuff. So it's like, we're already friends, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. How was the wine the other night?
Dude, we got, I hate to tell you, the most first world problem situation, but we kind of were disappointed by the restaurant and had to voice our concerns and complaints to them.
Oh, worst case scenario.
But even still, it was like, we ate so well, we drank so well, it just wasn't what we had planned to do, you know?
Right.
So I'm embarrassed. I won't even tell you the details because it's kind of embarrassing that we would ever be offended by the circumstance. But short answer, the wine was good.
Good. Excellent.
How was yours?
Cool, man. It was so good.
Was it?
It was so good. Yeah. I'm a huge Pinot. I like light wines. And I was kind of celebrating. I hadn't seen my aunt for a long time. And I was just like, you know what? We were having dinner together. And I was like, I'm just going to get a nice bottle of wine. So I did. And it was very nice.
Well, dude, kind of getting into the reason why we're chatting. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? What's your perspective at this point?
Yeah. I'm feeling so much, dude. It's insane. Like, I'm feeling all kinds of things simultaneously. And I'm just overwhelmed still. You know, today's Monday. So it's been 2 weeks or like 13 days, I guess, since the start of the whole fire situation. And yeah, man, I'm overwhelmed by the reality of losing everything. And then I'm kind of super overwhelmed by the love and support I've received from everybody. And, I always knew the surf community and, you know, my community of friends and clients and everything were always super tight and supportive and everything, but the outpouring of love and concern and it's just been overwhelming. It's just the only word I can, and humbling, and leaves me speechless, and just kind of everything I said on that big Instagram post. It's just like, can't even really comprehend everything that's going on at once. It's going to take some time, as most things do.
There's probably defense mechanisms built into humans to where you're not even allowed to understand the totality of it. Otherwise you'd be broken, you know, you'd break down.
Yeah, man, totally. I think you're absolutely right. And I've as I think a lot of people know, I've lost a couple people in my life too. And I think those sort of tragic experiences kind of have, like, if I wouldn't have gone through those, I don't think I'd be handling this the way I am, which I seem to be kind of finding, not that there's a silver lining or anything, but I kind of seem to be, I'm doing, I think, as best as anyone could expect. So trying to stay positive and trying to, you know, accept and learn and move on.
Where are you right now? Where are we recording this?
This is at the house I grew up in Bend, Oregon. So I'm 39 years old and holding up with mom again for a little bit.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly what you lost and what was the experience of the fire. It's the Holiday Farm fires for anybody who's listening or paying attention to the news. What was your experience?
So my experience was I was kind of going through another realm of loss and heartbreak, and I never really do anything on big holiday weekends because it's not my style. I try and stay away from large gatherings of humans, but I was like, man, I need to get out of the house and need to clear my headspace. So I was backpacking in Northeastern Oregon and did like 4 days and came down and called my mom to check in. And my mom was actually at the Blue River house where I was living. She was visiting with her husband, Don. And she was like, oh, it's so windy. It's like 80 degrees still. And it was 36 degrees where I was. So you have this like super low temperature front and a high front, and it just created these crazy, like 50-mile-per-hour sustained winds. And just later that night, like after we got off the phone, a telephone pole went down. And I haven't confirmed this, but I heard something crazy, like the fire traveled 13 miles in 2 hours or something like that. So I was sleeping. They got evacuated. Long story short, I got a text message at like 6 a.m. Hey, is the house okay? I was like, wow, what's going on? And then I just started, doing some research and called my mom, and she was all like, she was shocked. She was in a state of shock. She was back home here in Bend, and they had to evacuate like in the middle of the night. So my whole experience was I was 8 hours away and kind of learned about it on the phone. And then was just like, we didn't know if the house had burned or anything. And then, yeah, dude, it was just, it was a tense few days. And then I kind of, like 3 days later, that Friday, I think I made the decision to go try and get through some of the roadblocks. So I got through the first one with my ID, and then the second one, they wouldn't let me down. So an Oregon State trooper took down the address, went down to the house, came back like 45 minutes later, and he was like, so your house is gone. Your neighbors' houses are okay. Your neighbor's mini horse, pig, and 12 chickens are all there. Firemen are feeding them.
Whoa.
And he's like, you guys had an old Volkswagen in the garage, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, it's pretty much the only thing above ground, like the remnants of it.
That's wild. So it's just,
yeah, it's crazy.
Completely just bad luck that your house is the one, right?
Totally. And when my mom and Don were evacuating, I guess there was kind of like a little fire that had split off from like a big tree or something that was kind of like between our neighbor's house and the driveway along the side of the highway. And they were just like, that was the closest bit of fire at that point. But it's crazy.
So when you left for the weekend, there was virtually zero threat that you felt for your home, and so you didn't pack or prepare anything at all?
None, man, none whatsoever. I wasn't really looking at the forecast for my house. I was looking for where I was going to be backpacking and making sure the weather was going to be good. And I knew there had already been some fires in other parts of Central Oregon, North Central Oregon, like north of Mount Jefferson and in the Warm Springs Reservation area, that had been burning for a while. But yeah, I don't know. Didn't really think about it. Just thought about going backpacking and doing my thing.
It's crazy being kind of forced to confront the realities of this. If you just looked from afar, you would think, oh, I can pack the things that are important to me if I had warning. If they started putting out early level evacuations, I would pack priorities and then kind of leave with enough time to be safe. And
oh yeah, man.
But when you watch what's going on, and even I think you posted footage maybe that Dawn shot when they were driving out.
Yeah, a still photo. Yeah.
Okay, a photo. And I've seen footage though too that looks similar, where people are driving and it's basically burning on both sides of the road.
Yeah.
And embers or half of tree branches are falling into the road. It looks like pure apocalypse. And so what you realize when you hear people's story is that there might not be an imminent threat for them, but if you're isolated enough, there's only one road out, and between you and safety, you have to go through kind of a more treacherous zone.
Yeah.
And it can move, like you said, 13 miles in 2 hours or whatever the pace is. And so even if you have plenty of warning, things can shift so quickly and put you in immediate danger. And that's what I think people didn't realize or don't realize unless they've had experience with it.
Yeah. And I just, those winds are the real culprit.
Right.
You know, they took down the tree, and then and it wasn't just like an afternoon of winds. It was like a couple of days on end. So I think that's why the thing just got completely out of hand so fast. And I mean, I mean, I don't care how many firemen, I don't care how many people are going to be on the front lines of something like that. Like it's going to do what it's going to do, because
Totally.
it's the wind and the heat and yeah. Well, a good friend of mine, his dad was the chief of police in Springfield, or chief of fire in Springfield, Oregon. And he was like, yeah, like when you have a little campfire, like a little campfire in your backyard or the beach or whatever, and a log like pops and the embers come out. And he's like, when that happens in a forest fire, those embers can go miles.
Oh yeah.
And start fires. So it's just like one after the other, starting all over the place. Chaos.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, so what did you lose?
Oh, I lost everything that I didn't have in my truck, man. I was wearing like dorky backpacking clothes for like 7 days.
Among it, what are the
mainly
biggest,
like
biggest priorities?
My image archive. Yeah, everything. Luckily, I've got awesome clients, and my printer Phil, I've been printing with him for like 10 years. He saved everything. So I got a thumb drive in the mail today with probably like 25, 30 high res photos from him, which is great. Some really iconic shots. So that's great news, but yeah, and clients with commercial work and editorial projects, the Surfer's Journal and Surfer and a bunch of international magazines are digging through their archives to find me some stuff. So that's all great. And I have the website and everything, but a lot of that stuff's lower resolution and won't really equate to big prints. And then, like just trips that, I was in Morocco for 3 weeks in 2018, kind of in the interior of the country, just on a family trip with my girlfriend at the time. And I hadn't really done anything with those images, but I loved them. And then I was in Alaska for 3 weeks last summer, like flying on helicopters and walking on huge ridges overlooking glaciers and stuff, just kind of a once in a lifetime trip, and haven't really done much with those images. So it's kind of those personal project stuff that you're just like, just really, really stings. I mean, it all stings, man. But, luckily a lot of the surf stuff's documented and out there and on the website. But yeah, I mean, no matter how you look at it, it's a gigantic loss. And then just, possessions. My biological father and my stepfather, who was basically my father as well, they've both passed, and just some family heirlooms from them, like necklaces that my dad had made in Hawaii in the 70s, and watches that were super important to me. And yeah, old pictures of them and me that, just had like one copy left, just sitting at the house, just stuff like that. And it's material stuff, but sometimes material stuff you really form a relationship with, and it kind of help you become who you are in a weird way.
Of course. Yeah. And then in addition to the sentimental stuff, the other material stuff is how you make a living, right? You lost all your hardware.
Yeah. Lost it all. Luckily I've got, I'd say, pretty good camera business insurance.
Oh,
so the camera stuff is for the most part covered. I hadn't updated my equipment list entirely. So
yeah,
I lost a lot more. That's not even going to be close to breaking even, but at least it's something.
Yeah.
But then, like probably like you and a lot of the listeners, like I'm a surfboard hoarder.
Oh yeah.
I probably had like 12 surfboards, and luckily for my job, I'm fortunate to travel all around the world. So I've got wetsuits for every water temperature, and just old film cameras and, backpacking equipment, fly fishing equipment, chainsaws, like tools. I don't know. Right. It adds up. It's just, you start thinking about like motorcycles, like motorcycle stands, I don't know, just
right.
Crazy.
So Chris Burkhardt set up a GoFundMe, and in it he wrote, quote, "For the record, Mark refused to set this up. It took some hard words, or I think he said harsh words, from a friend for Mark to realize that we are grieving as he grieves, and the way that we heal is to help."
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what were the harsh words that a friend shared with you?
Oh, a couple of different things. A buddy of mine sent me a Venmo, like a couple $100, and I immediately refunded it. And he was like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's like, "I have money set aside to help people, to do things like this with. Please just let me help you." Like, you're one of my best friends. I'm hurting. I know you because you're hurting. He's like, and this helps me knowing that I'm helping you. And that was sort of like an aha, kind of like a profound moment for me. I was like, whoa, you know. And then another buddy called, and he was like, kind of the same situation where I was just like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And he's like, you're not good. He's like, you're anything but good. He's like, let us help. Like, let your friends help. Like, you're being stubborn and irrational if you're not going to allow people to help. So I just have surrendered, you know. If people, I don't know, it feels different. And it feels a little uncommon for me to be on the receiving end of so much generosity. But, and I mean, that's not all my friends and family. I mean, we're all generous and love each other and all that kind of stuff. But I've never had this type of support and to this extent before, you know.
Do you believe them? Do you believe that they help, like they heal through helping?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you know, I believe in karma, and I think what goes around comes around. And I've done stuff for people I don't even know on GoFundMe or Kickstarter before and stuff like that. And not that I was necessarily hurting, but it makes you feel good to know that you're helping out, you know? And I think if I put myself in this situation, if my best friend's house burned to the ground, I'd be doing the exact same thing. So when I put myself in their shoes, like, I fully get it.
Yeah. I always feel really uncomfortable asking for help.
Oh, same, man.
Like, I don't think I've ever, I mean, I'd have a hard time remembering actually asking for it, but even when it's offered, I'll do the same thing as you and defer. But your friends are absolutely right. Like, I've learned that not everybody is built the way that I'm built. And it makes them feel useful, you know, makes people in general feel useful.
Yeah. It's been really, I'm just going to be a broken record with the overwhelming word. Cause it's really, it's hard for me to even conjure up the right words to express how all of the support and feels, you know. It's pretty next level.
I'm kind of curious about, it's probably too early to even assess this, but this really kind of is a forced resetting.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you will, presuming the GoFundMe and whatever else insurance helps out and GoFundMe is successful, but how would you reset differently than you were positioned before? Would you buy different things? Would you have
No, I don't. No. I don't think I'm going to do much different, to be honest. I think maybe, I think just with the nature of everything that I'm into in my life in terms of like extracurricular activities, it all requires a certain amount of gear. And so to think about everything that was in there and that I lost, it's kind of overwhelming to think of, do I really need to go replace all of that stuff? Because it was so much. And I was talking with some friends last night and they were like, man, this is sort of like the full Buddhist reset. Like, you have nothing.
Totally is. Yeah.
You have absolutely nothing. And that must be a freeing feeling to an extent, even if I can't recognize it right now. But I think I can recognize it. I do understand how, and anyway, to get back to the question, I don't know what I would do differently. I think, I guess what I'm getting at with this long ramble is that maybe I'll have less stuff. Yeah.
I could see myself doing the same thing if I was in that position. I mean, in that downtime, in the interim, you're going to have to learn to live with very little.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
So, back to Chris Burkhardt. How did you meet?
This is classic. When I decided to be a surf photographer, I was all pumped on it one day, and I was living in Portland at the time, and I came back from the coast, and it was a little out of my league that day in terms of waves. It was big and just really, really hollow, but I had a camera. I was always into photography, and I had a camera. I was taking these pictures. I was like, well, this turned out pretty cool. And I was sort of at a transition phase in my life, trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, man, I wonder if I should be a surf photographer. That'd be pretty sweet. So I went, my dad was notorious for having these like white, or these yellow like legal pads, you know? And so
Mhm.
he'd always like give them to me. And that's kind of what I would always take notes on too. So I had this yellow legal pad and a pen, and I was just going through the internet looking for surf photographers to like gain inspiration from and kind of see what it was all about. And I was really into surfing and all the magazines and all that kind of stuff. So I was privy to the imagery, but I just went through all of these websites and I ended up writing two names down to reach out. One was Chris Burkhardt and the other one was Jeremy Koreski up in Canada. And I really identified with both of their work and sent him emails right away. And Jeremy wrote back right away. He's like, hey, if you're ever in Canada, like, you know, let's get together for a beer or whatever, which we have done. And then Berkey wrote back right away too. He's like, well, that's crazy that you're reaching out. My wife and I were just talking about how I should do a little tutorial program or like a internship or something. He's like, just come down, give me X amount of bucks a day and kind of stay as long as you want. So I drove down from Portland. I think the next weekend I was so fired up.
Wow.
Drove down to Pismo, I think or Arroyo Grande, one of the two, where he was living at the time. And yeah, man, we just sat down all weekend and basically just talked really. And I voice recorded the whole thing. And he walked me through a little bit of his workflow and some simple editing stuff. But for the most part, it was just all about verbally kind of just kind of figuring out what it takes to do it and everything. And I left with like a really long list of contacts and just started shooting up in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest and some trips to Hawaii and stuff, and just one thing after another. And then we've maintained a really, really close relationship since.
What year was that?
2008.
So where was he at in his career? Was he
I think he had
superstar?
He wasn't a superstar, but he had just won, or maybe this was prior to the first Follow the Light. I know that he had just left Surfline because he was Surfline staff photographer for a while. And I know he had just left Surfline and was going out freelance. This is before he was staff on Surfer. So yeah, I think he was kind of in an interim, actually, speaking of interims.
Well, obviously he's transitioned well beyond surf photography.
Yeah.
And he's a phenomenal example to kind of look at for somebody who's success as the surf industry has kind of fallen apart, for somebody who's exited at the exact right time and also taken advantage of all these new platforms that we have like Instagram.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, in that meeting or in that weekend with him, you said you walked away with a legal pad full of contacts, but what did you walk away with? Was it more advice for how to logistically run a surf photography business? Or was it, philosophical kind of worldview for how to be a successful photographer?
No, it was everything, man. It was everything from, just even some compositional suggestions, based on the surf imagery, the small, tiny little bit of surf imagery I had to show him. And it was use your resources. What do you have where you live? Who's around that can help you? And it was, stay hungry. If someone tells you no, let that fuel your fire. Because there's a lot of similarities between Chris and I, because they're where he started shooting on the central coast of California and where I started shooting, there's a lot of similarities. Not a ton of pro surfers, not a ton of great surfers, not a ton of people that are really going to be dynamic and create the type of imagery that we need to impress high performance surf outlets,
Yeah.
And he told me, there's going to be a lot of people that tell you that you can't do it. A lot of people told me there's no way I was going to be able to do it where I live. And, here we are however many years later, and it's all worked out. And I took a lot of what he said to heart, and I just did all those things.
Did you feel optimistic about being able to make a living as a surf photographer at that time?
Back then, but man, if I was starting now.
Yeah.
Back then I was optimistic. And I was 27, 28, 20, something like that. And I was just so hungry. And I was so obsessed with it. and I still am. I'm still super, super passionate about it. But it's just like anything, you know, sometimes you wish you could go back and you know, be forced to buy those little dollar Tostino's pizzas because it's all you could afford, you know, because you want to save the money for gas to go somewhere and shoot the next day or whatever. And just that super, super hungry, like I have to make this happen type energy.
I mean, it instills a drive in you that you can't manufacture otherwise. And it's the difference between successful people and not, you know, complacency.
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question, yeah, I did. I knew that, you know, I'd always hoped to branch out and do different types of photography, but, even having done that and continuing to do that, there's just nothing like going on a surf trip, man. As you know, anybody that goes on surf trips knows.
Well, what's funny too is the one thing that you identified as a potential limitation, your location and the access to surfers, turned out to really be your asset. Like,
absolutely.
Like at that time, 2008, it was like we have been so saturated with seeing surfers on boat trips doing thin throws. Like we don't need any more of that.
Totally.
So a lot of the photography that you guys were doing has really kind of become the template for the next decade of photography, you know?
Yeah. I mean, especially Chris and some other people that were doing really, really out there kind of cold water stuff. I think I was just sort of fortunate that my day-to-day environment was cold water. And so that's just what I gravitate towards anyway. I didn't really have to go seek it out. I mean, whatever, like Central Coast of California is cold too, but you know, it's sort of, you know, you mentioned like the next decade of kind of that new cold water surf exploration thing. And yeah, there's a few people that really opened that thing up. And I was kind of lucky to be on the coattails there.
When did you kind of identify or recognize that you were making it professionally and you felt secure in that profession?
I still don't feel secure, man. Right. Yeah. It's, you know, things change and you can do, you know, from 2014 to 2019, I'd do my taxes every year and I'd be like, dang, that's pretty cool, you know? And then a creative director changes, for instance, or a brand goes underwater and you're just like kind of left high and dry without any warning, without anything. You're like, okay, it's 2009 again. Here I go on the email train, just bothering creative directors for weeks on end, trying to find a way to regain that income. But again, that's as shocking and as sort of off-putting as that can be at the beginning. When you start grinding again and really like making really beautiful pitch decks and like trying to find the right people's contact information and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of becomes fun again. It's like fishing, you know? You just like never know when you're going to land a big one.
Yeah. Well, in your kind of most, in your busiest years, who are among your client list and what did your travel schedule look like? What kind of jobs were you shooting?
Let's see. I was shooting Body Glove, started an activewear line, which in its first couple years was called Breathe. And then there was some copyright infringement or something. And they had to just change it to Body Glove Activewear. So that was like my first commercial client and they've been loyal. I'm the only person to shoot a campaign for them. And then they quit the line last year. And then Prana, the yoga company, kind of climbing company, lifestyle company out of San Diego. I shot a lot of their yoga and lifestyle clothing for about 5 years and like 2 to 3 shoots a year. Body Glove was 2 shoots a year. I shoot this little swimwear line called Iden, which is 2 shoots a year. And then, you know, I'd use that commercial money to fund surf trips, you know, so if people are going wherever and they want me to go, then it's like, great, I'll just put on my credit card and pay it off, you know, with the commercial jobs. And it was a pretty slick little system, dude. I was loving life and I'm still loving life, but it was a really cool 4 or 5 years. Travel schedule, it was just pretty much always on the go.
Well, what's funny though about that is the surf trip you have to pay for yourself. Like that's the way the surf industry works and I mean, maybe you can explain the model better than I, but you go on a trip with pro surfers and you hope to be able to sell imagery afterwards, right?
Exactly. And luckily, luckily there's some surf brands that I don't know if it's trust you more or know that you're going to deliver or whatever, but you can create some small contractual stuff before you go. If you have, you know, if they need imagery and you're going, then it's pretty easy for them to look at your work and say, hey, okay, this guy more or less knows what he's doing. We need images of this thing on this surfer. This is a great place. And so then, you know, you can kind of negotiate and work some stuff out. But there's also trips where I've been like, you know, do you want to go to here? And be like, yeah, let's go. And then you spend all this money and you get unbelievable images. And then you come back and, you know, nobody needs anything, whether it's editorial or commercial or, you know, even like stuff for like social. You know, some brands will be like, no, we're good. And you're like, what do you mean? This image should be a freaking cover and you're good? Like, how are you passing on this? But, you know, people's hands are tied, especially nowadays, you know?
Well, and I feel like they're less inclined to pay for it. I don't know if there's a bunch of other people working for free, but I feel like brands are just, you know, they'll expect a lot of that stuff for free, essentially.
No one should be working for free.
Right.
I'll tell you that much right now. But, you know, the social media thing, you know, I learned how to shoot photos on film, and I'm way before digital anything. And I just feel like with Instagram, social media, whatever, Facebook, whatever, people, and obviously there's phenomenal things about social media as well.
Yeah.
But I think one of the downsides, especially for aspiring photographers, is they want to get their follower count up. They want to get their likes up. They want to hashtag everything. And they want to, and that will kind of, in my opinion, devalue work that people have already been doing, because it's just like one of those things, say, you know, whatever, like say Jeremiah Klein or somebody's posted up at Lowers, like shooting a swell story for Surfline or something. And then some kid gets basically the same shot or whatever, and then posts it on his Instagram before Surfline runs the swell story or whatever. It's kind of like, well, we already saw this, you know?
Right.
And luckily I think a lot of the editorial outlets are becoming a little more aware that just because somebody posts a photo on social media, like it doesn't necessarily mean the photo's over or dead or not worthy of being run elsewhere.
Yeah.
But
I think there was a moment in time, or maybe 3 to 5 years, where it was the fact that somebody else had posted it meant it was dead. But I think we've rounded a bend now to where it's about the context that you create around that photo and the story that's associated with it and how you position the photo.
totally.
Not composition wise, but how you position it for the market to kind of see it.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
I've had things run on Instagram before, and in fact, just White Horses Mag from Australia, they just did I just had a couple images in their last issue, and 2 of them, they were like, hey, we saw this on your Instagram. And I was like, well, great.
Yeah. And so they wanted to run it because they saw it on your Instagram. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So yeah, I guess it's a double-edged. I guess I haven't really thought out this whole thing well enough to speak how I really feel about it, but
it changes.
Exactly. We're in this landscape now that's just, I mean, gosh, everything's changing now. I mean, everything. It's nuts.
Well, I was going to ask too about a lot of the photography I associate you with comes from Oregon, and I was wondering, how hard is it to coax pro surfers on a trip up there?
It depends on who it is. You know, I've worked with the Brewweilers from Canada. They were the first pros I ever worked with, and we did a trip to the Pacific Northwest. And you know, they're from Canada, so it's no big deal for them. You know, I've worked with Albie in Oregon before, and I was like, well, that's cool, like Albie's here. But then he's like, oh, Matt won't come because Matt doesn't want to, you know, be in cold water. And which I think has changed. Matt's done some pretty cool trips with, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or anything.
No.
He's done some cool trips with Salty. But yeah, I don't know. You know, I try not to do too much stuff up here in terms of like bringing pros. You know, there was a time in my career where I was real hungry, and I would do pretty much anything to get a pro surfer to come up here and work with me. Timmy Reyes was an early one. He was coming up to the Pacific Northwest quite a bit. And yeah, let's see. Albie's been up a couple times. Cam Richards, the Vissla crew, kind of did a little thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think for me, how it all started, as I'm sure you're well aware, was just empty waves because there wasn't really anybody around. So
Yeah.
that's kind of still what I prefer to shoot. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the world of cold water surfing is really just exploding and continues to explode with wetsuit technology. And then, like Josh Kerr and Damian Hobgood were up here doing some RV trip. And um, yeah, I think that people are just realizing, like, you know, there's some decent waves when the conditions align, and wetsuits are pretty good. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they can deal with the shark factor and the cold water, and the fact that the you know, the forecast can say one thing, but man, there's no guarantee up here for sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like Timmy Reyes almost had a second career kind of resurgence based on those trips where, like, I don't know, fell off the CT or whatever it was, kind of just was a fledgling guy for a little bit. And then all of that imagery was so impactful, and he seemed to be the only one doing it and really like committing to the work involved.
Yeah.
And I feel like he thrived off that for 3 years or something.
Yeah. Well, to counteract that point, Josh Molkoy has been doing it since the late 80s. He just doesn't take photos and as much
totally.
video. And I think he's kind of been an underground guy that hasn't necessarily always been traveling with a videographer or a photographer. So yeah, I think Timmy saw a lot of what Josh was doing, and some other people that not necessarily even pros, but some people from Northern California and Canada, and that kind of know when it's good down here. And
Yeah.
word travels. We have some waves here that everybody knows about and likes to check out.
Yeah. Kind of segueing, you referenced that your father and your stepfather both passed away.
Yeah.
And I know your father passed away due to a shark attack.
Yeah.
And I heard you state that it's only strengthened your desire to surf more, kind of to honor his life's passion.
Yeah.
Which could be viewed as counterintuitive. I think a lot of people would instill a greater sense in fear for them. So can you tell me firstly about his incident?
Yeah.
I would like to hear that story. And then also how that changed you.
Yeah. So it was April 7th, 2004. And I was going to school in Eugene, Oregon at the time. And you can edit this out if this story gets too long-winded, but it's such a crazy part of the story. Please deliver. I had befriended another like skater, kind of like punk rock kid, which is kind of like how I've always identified. And in my math class, and we lived near each other, and we started carpooling to school, and we're kind of building this friendship, and I really liked him. And so one day he was driving, and I was like, hey man, tell me about your family, and he was like, oh, well, my mom passed away. And then I just started talking to him about that. I was like, oh, crazy, man. I can't even imagine like what that would be like. I'm so sorry. And he was kind of telling me his story about, coping and grieving and all that kind of stuff. And he drops me off, and I had forgotten my cell phone at the house. And I walked up my driveway, and I went in, and I had like 50 or 80 or some crazy amount of missed calls. And I was like, what the hell? And a lot of them were numbers I didn't have in my phone, and a lot of 808 numbers. My dad lived in Hawaii. And I was like, what is going on? So I actually called my dad in Hawaii, and no answer. Then I called my stepdad at work. And just for the record, I hate the term stepdad, but I just have to use it to differentiate. But he was just as much of a father as my biological father. But anyway, I called him, and I was like, what's going on? I'm getting all these phone calls. Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, he was just straight up as could be. He was, your dad had an accident today, and your mom's on her way to come see you. And I was like, is he okay? And he was like, no. I was like, is he alive? And he was like, no.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, well, I can't, I can't remember exactly what happened, but then I must have asked what happened or something, and he said shark attack. And yeah, man, I was just just and just completely shocked, completely shocked.
So where was your dad, and was there any witnesses that
Yeah. So
retold the story?
yeah, he lived on the west side of Maui, and there's a break there called S turns, and there was kind of like a little hui, like a surf posse that hung out there, and he was part of that surf crew. And it had been a super super rainy winter and spring, and I had talked to him the night before, and he was like, there's finally some swell, the rain finally stopped. He's like, I got one of the best rides of my life today. And he was a cruiser, he just rode logs and just cruised. And he's like, the water is dirty, but the waves are so good, and this and that. And then so we got off the phone that night, and then the next day he went dawn patrol, and right where that break is, there's like a what do they call it, like a culvert or whatever, that like diverts water, like rainwater, like out, and it just all goes like right out right there.
Yep.
And so from what everybody tells me, the water was just brown, like super murky. And he was dawn patrolling with like 4 other people, and it was really good apparently, and everyone was hooting and hollering, and he got a wave, and then he was paddling back out, and that's when it happened. And so he was yelling for help, but everybody in the lineup, I think, originally thought he was just like hollering and hooting, you know, for a good wave. And then they realized that he was having issues, and they came, and he told them, you know, and I guess he was like, my leg is toast. And it got him from like he was tall like me, he was like 6'4", 6'5", and it had got him from his hip like all the way down to below his knee. So it was
oh my gosh,
it was big. So it was I think that's the femoral artery.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So and it's the wave isn't close either. You paddle out this big long channel, so it's probably 100 to 200 yards from like the actual little beach they have there. That might be an exaggeration. 100 yards, we'll say, long enough. And yeah, they're like, everybody that helped him there was like, yeah, he was definitely gone before we even got him to the beach. So
man,
he passed in the water, man, and he was a beautiful, beautiful soul and a beautiful person. And I just say that it was like a beautiful end to an already beautiful life. I don't think there's any way he would have rather gone. He was a full waterman, diver, spearfisher, and everything.
How old was he?
Put me on the spot. I think he was 57 when it happened. 57, 58.
Relatively young.
Oh yeah.
I like hearing though that you said he got the best wave of his life the day
Yeah.
before, a couple days before.
Yeah.
Like just knowing that you can still get the best wave of your life when you're well past your prime is a really nice thought.
Totally, man. Totally. And I think that he had just and he lived in Hawaii throughout the 70s. Like he was there when Jerry Lopez was living there, and he had Jerry shape him a board for Honolulu Bay. So I mean, he used to charge, and but you know, and he quit surfing for a long time and was just sort of more of a waterman, liked spearfishing, and he had like a metal detector that he would like take in the water, and just, yeah, he was awesome, man. He just like treasure hunted and drove taxis and just like did anything he could to make ends meet. It's pretty cool.
So how did that experience strengthen your resolve to actually want to surf more?
Well, I think he introduced me to surfing, and as a kid, I was obsessed with skateboarding and snowboarding, and I just always loved board sports. But it's kind of weird. It took me a while to really catch on and really want to surf. But as soon as I did, as most surfers know, it just became a full-blown addiction. And my dad and I had a great, wonderful, beautiful, awesome relationship, but we never really had something to do that we were both real passionate about. And so when I started surfing and he restarted surfing, it was like, this is the best thing ever, like, you know? And so I had, I almost like surfing and my dad were kind of just like glued together. Like they were kind of always happened together, because I wasn't surfing in Oregon at the time. I would just surf when I would visit Hawaii.
Oh, I see.
And so then when he passed, I was like, I'm just going to surf everywhere as a way to, like you said, as a way to honor him and keep his spirit inside of me alive. Because surfing is something that he gave me. And right. As we sit here right now, it's completely changed my life. And it's the largest driving force in my life. And it still is today.
I know you grew up snowboarding as kind of another huge passion. I'm just curious how surfing is different for you, because I've only ever had surfing and I like to think that it's different, like I'm just like, no, surfing's better than all those other things. But how would you define that, or what's the difference?
I really suck at surfing.
Okay.
And I can hold my own snowboarding, I guess. But I mean, I can surf, but man, when you work with professionals all the time, and you see even like, I don't know, when you look at someone like Grant Ellis or somebody, who's a or Todd Glazer or whatever, these surf photographers that also like rip, you're just like, man, I suck.
Yeah.
So I think the learning curve for surfing is just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. I feel like half the time I get out of the water, like more pissed off than when I got in, because I just blew it, or, I don't know. It's a funny thing. And it affects everybody differently. You hear people that are like, man, I always get out of the water, like feeling so much better and happier. And sometimes I come out of the water just livid.
Totally. Well, if you're trying to improve, then you're inevitably going to feel pissed afterwards, because you don't always improve.
And I don't know. Some days at 39 years old, I feel like I'm improving. And then other times I'm like, man, I should get on the mid-length.
Totally. Everybody should.
Yeah. I rode my first mid-length yesterday and had an absolute riot.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind did you get?
It was a Mitzvin, Bob Mitzvin. My buddy Ben Moon let me borrow it because I'm boardless, and he was like, man, just come surf. And God bless Ben Moon, because that was one of the most fun sessions I've had on a surfboard in a really long time.
What were the waves like?
The waves were like I would say I'm 6'3", so for me, I'd say they were like waist, and then maybe some shoulder high sets, like stomach to shoulder, I would say, and pretty soft. And then the tide started draining out, and I had one like towards the end when the tide was draining, where I was just like, whoa, I'm like right in the pocket, trimming, like pretty steep, little almondy. It was pretty fun.
Was it a beach break or a point?
Beach break.
Okay.
Beach break. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, good.
But nice clean winds and clean waves, and it was awesome.
You also referenced Jerry Lopez living in Maui at the same time as your dad.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's relocated to Bend, Oregon, which is where you grew up.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I didn't hear the name Bend, Oregon for 30 years of my life. And then in the last 7 or 8 years, I literally hear it mentioned twice a week. I had visit bend.com reach out to me to sponsor a podcast like months ago. Like, it's all over the place. What is the deal? Why is it so popular?
God.
And does that make you angry that it's become so popular?
Okay, here's the deal, dude. It doesn't make me angry whatsoever. That's a lie. I'm lying. It makes me angry. It does. It does. It frustrates me because it's just so much different than when I grew up. But this isn't to make anybody that lives here feel unwelcome. It's not to condemn anybody for moving. It's a free, the age-old phrase, it's a free country. You can do whatever you want. People can go wherever they want. It's just one of those things where there's just so many people now. So many people. Like, there's a really popular thing to do in the summer here, which is float down the Deschutes River. And like my friends and I literally, maybe not the first people or whatever, but we're like, definitely there wasn't anyone else doing it besides like our group of friends on the river. You float on the river, somebody steals a beer from their parents' fridge or something, and you're like splitting it between 3 people, like having the time of your lives. And now it's turned into just this, it's just, you'll see thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people doing it. And, but it's, there's this plaque that, like the park that runs through town here is called Drake Park. And in Drake Park, there's like this plaque that kind of has some little history about Bend. And there's a quote on there, and it says, it talks about the early settlers of the area and how it's like, what's it say? It's like, you have the mountains of Switzerland, the like farmlands of Wisconsin, the I don't know, it just goes on and on about what we have here. And it just, I would encourage any person that visits Bend, that lives in Bend, to go read that plaque. It's at the top of the park. And it really spells out in an eloquent way just how special the place is. So why you hear about it twice a week is because it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And anything that you want to do that doesn't involve the ocean, not only can you outdoor wise, like activity wise, not only can you do it, but you can do it world class, and if not damn near world class.
Right. Yeah. We like to brag where we're at in Southern California. We have the beach and we have the mountains and we have the desert, but it's pretty crappy versions of all of those things. Like the skiing locally is terrible.
Yeah.
The beaches are pretty filthy. You know, the waves aren't actually that good.
Yeah. I was actually just living in Venice for the last 3 years. I just moved home in March. So it was a rough one.
I saw Chris mention that in the GoFundMe that you had just moved home.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize you were living in Venice for that time.
Mm-hmm.
Just for commercial work?
I shot no surf photography when I was there. None.
Really?
Not one. I think I shot one day at, like, from the cliff at Black's or something on a really good day when I was visiting San Diego. But
why were you living in Venice?
I fell in love.
Oh,
followed
I should have known, dude.
Yeah. But you know, I regret nothing. It was, I have, you know, thank God I moved down there, because I have some unbelievably close friends, and there was nothing really wrong with it. I was even, you know, willing to split time and kind of find a way to bounce back and forth between Oregon and California. And there's a lot of things I really, really love about it. But for day to day, for like my home base, I just missed what I've always known.
Oh, dude. Listeners have an awareness of Venice, but Venice has changed a lot in various decades.
Right.
And it's a wild time there now. It's like literally ultra uber wealth. And then the next street over,
right,
gunshots, drug deals, gang activity. And then again, the next street over, Jack Black lives there, and you see him getting coffee in the morning. You know, it's wild.
Perfectly said. I experienced all of those things when I was living there.
Yeah. That's got to be a good for stories in the future, if nothing else.
For sure. And like I said, man, I have friends and that I never would have met, that I never would have known hadn't I moved down there. And I think they'll be friends, you know, for the rest of my life. I cherish and really value my friendships. So,
what is your workout? I mean, obviously prior to the fire, COVID has probably shifted your work life.
Yeah, big time.
What does your work life look like going forward?
That's a really good question. Currently, you know, I think, as we all know, it relates to surfing, and it relates to pretty much every other activity you can do in the outdoors, has just boomed in COVID. So I had a bunch of commercial work from March through June that was all canceled because of COVID. But luckily, I have some really awesome clients like Danner Boots, who's based here in Oregon, Osprey Backpacks, some Big Agnes camping stuff. So I've been busy throughout the summer, kind of doing some things for brands like that and really tapping into the outdoor space. So, you know, it's not big 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 day campaign work, but I've been staying busy enough to where luckily there's some money trickling in.
Good.
And moving forward, you know, I've got a shoot in LA for a women's clothing line in October, just a 1-day shoot. But, you know, I think people are becoming aware to the fact, like, okay, hey, we can do this safely. Yeah. We can size down. We can, you know, wear a mask, bring hand sanitizer, keep everybody 6 feet apart, shoot with a longer lens. Like, there's ways to continue commercial work. And so I think that as we get, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully I'm not being naive, and I hope this thing passes sooner or later and everything goes back to normal.
Right.
But I think the doors will open back up for commercial work opportunity.
presuming it does open back up, like, again, like you said, a lot of those outdoor companies have thrived through this time. And
Thrived,
so
man.
they should be flush, with revenue, with cash,
Right.
and be able to resume business as usual in terms of marketing. And
Yeah.
Obviously travel is going to be the huge issue.
Man, I know. I got to get a new passport now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
whatever.
I'm glad that you guys have, like, you have a place to stay now. You're not
Exactly.
homeless.
And that's the thing, man. That's one of the, I really wanted to give back to the community because, again, man, the fact that I'm sitting here with a roof over my head and like my mom insisting on making dinner for me,
Yeah, exactly.
as good moms do, my position is so much better. As bad as it is,
Yeah.
it's so much better than literally thousands of people. So the GoFundMe for me, it's so overwhelming. And to anybody listening that's supported, whether it's monetarily, whether it's with a direct message, whether it's an email, people I've never even known in my life have been reaching out. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. But my position is better than a lot of people. So to be able to give 10% of that, over the goal, 10% of what we make over the goal, I want to donate. And then I've gotten boxes of clothes donated. Friends in LA are getting clothes to ship up.
Cool.
It's just, that's honestly, it sounds cliche, but that's honestly like what I'm looking forward to most is being able to like just say, even though it's a small amount, I need help too. But even though it's a small amount, I'm really excited to be able to give back in whatever form it may be.
Good. Obviously you already covered the last surfboard that you rode when you told me about the mid-spin mid-length yesterday.
Yeah. Yep.
I think more interestingly, what podcasts are you listening to right now? You and I have shared personal notes on podcasts, and obviously listeners are fond of the medium. So
yes.
tell them, what are your go-tos?
Well, I heard you talking to Charlie on the Grit last week, and you were saying what was it? The Pinkerton Massacre?
Yeah.
So because you and I had some podcast DMs, I immediately subscribed to that one. Haven't started listening to it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. But and again, it's sort of beating a dead horse maybe on the Surf Splendor network, but I love Dirty Water.
Oh, do you?
Oh, with Chaz and Derek.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've always loved. I'm a huge fan. I'll just say it. I'll just plain and simple. I'm a huge fan of all things Chaz, all things Derek. So the fact that not only when they started Beach Grit, I was over the moon, and now they have a podcast. I'm just like, I look forward to that as much as I look forward to the Grit. So
did you listen to the Peter Schroff episode, and did you make it all the way through?
I did.
Oh, you did? Good
I did.
You.
I listened to the whole thing. Yeah. It was, I loved it. I loved it. It was, I was in side splitting laughter almost the whole time.
Did you listen to Dave Prodane's interview with Tom Curran last week?
No.
Yeah. On Dave Prodane's The Lineup podcast, the WSL makes, he interviewed Tom Curran. And that was another one where I love Tom Curran as a surfer. I want to hear him interviewed, and it's hard. He's unintelligible, like it's so hard to sit through a full interview with him. And I heard really mixed reviews. Like a couple people emailed me or messaged me just to say essentially the same thing.
Gotcha.
And then one person messaged and they're like, I loved it so much. I hang on every word that Tom says, and I listened to it 2 times, one after another. So
just so they could like dissect it,
I guess. I mean, I don't read that at all. Like, I mean, to me, it was unintelligible. I couldn't make it through it actually.
Yeah. Another one I listened to, obviously a lot of people, well, most people I'm assuming that are familiar with the podcast world are familiar with Joe Rogan, but he had this author on, Tom O'Neill, who wrote the book Chaos, which is about basically the mishandling essentially and all the conspiracies around the Charlie Manson case. That was a phenomenal Rogan. And I mean, I'll be 100% honest. There's a lot of Rogans I can't get through.
Yeah, me
because
too.
They go so long, and halfway through they're drinking and smoking, and which is fine, but it gets a little wormy.
I'm surprised that he's taken off as much as he has for that exact reason. Like, I would think that there would need to be more structure for him to have the success that he's had.
Yeah.
Because 3 hours, 2 or 3 times a week is way too much to ask of people. But for some reason, people dig it. And I'm the same way as you, where I just cherry pick his episodes.
Right.
If there's
Same.
somebody of interest, I'll listen.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of Tom O'Neill before, but when he Instagrammed about it and said that it was about CIA and I think MK Ultra was the name of that program and Charles Manson, I was like, dude, I'm in. And God, it was so fascinating. Like, and it's easy to say that it was conspiracy theory. It's not conspiracy theory. He fully factually verified all of this stuff. CIA giving LSD to people.
Oh,
like,
dude, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah,
crazy.
I'm about 100 pages shy of finishing the book right now, and it's the whole reason I haven't read Reports yet, which I'm just dying to get into, being a huge fan of Chaz, and it's a phenomenal book. Anybody that likes, murder, conspiracy, like it really covers a wide gamut of topics.
Or just understanding like the way that the government is actually operating and manipulating and not fully giving information or whatever.
Oh, it's so insane. Yeah, it's insane. And then another last one that I've been really digging lately is there's a New York-based photographer who covers fashion, and he spent a lot of time on the North Shore, Justin J. He's doing a podcast now called The Plug, which is really cool. I've been a fan of his work for a long time, and anytime like somebody I kind of look up to or admire is either a guest on a podcast or starts their own, I really like to tune in and kind of find out more about what they're about and all that kind of stuff. So that's another good one. The Plug.
I've had Justin on this show twice, and
I listened to one of the episodes.
Yeah, and I love Justin too, and I loved his work, and I was so fascinated when I saw him. I mean, I got introduced to him through surf photography, but to then see his portfolio traveling on the road with P. Diddy for a couple of years as his personal photographer and all that sort of stuff, I was like, whoa, who is this guy?
Yeah, and then the doors that open.
Totally. And because of all of that access, his podcast he's got Ireland Baldwin and kind of all of these legit celebrities on his podcast now. So it's pretty awesome.
It is. It's so cool that I think he was able to tap into that surf world, as well as the celebrity world. And then like the commercial work he does and stuff. He's a very, very well-rounded, and he's very, seems like he is welcome with open arms anywhere he goes, which is he should be. He's a phenomenal photographer.
Have you ever met him or spent time with him?
No, we've had a couple of DMs, just, I really loved his book, the
HI1K.
Thank you. Yeah, that book was awesome.
It is. Yeah. Good.
That was another thing that burnt up in the fires, man, was I had I'm addicted to coffee table books. It's actually, I think it is an addiction, it's a problem. Like something comes out, and especially if it's like limited edition or something, if I have the funds, man, it's like, I'm on it.
Those things are so expensive too.
Oh, dude, thousands of dollars.
It's crazy.
Thousands of dollars. It's just insane.
It's crazy. Yeah. I know. I kind of have a similar, it's not an addiction, but I do have a affinity for them. And
maybe that's the better word, affinity.
But you also, what I find is I won't look at them for years. Like I get it and I love it intensely, and I do 2 or 3 laps, put it down, and then not never, but don't look at it for years. And so when it comes time, like when I want to buy a new one, I have to have that conversation with myself. I'm like, dude, you don't even look at the ones that you have. Once in 5 years, when you do thumb through it, you're thrilled that you have it.
Or they can be a phenomenal conversation starter with other people. They come over and see it on the bookshelf and stuff. That's something I've found. And just great for inspiration.
If Justin J can be looked at as an example, there's no other way for you to access his work. Like I can see his work on Instagram, but because magazines aren't really, that prevalent anymore, like I have this desire to see his work, and it's just not available. And so that is now the thing. That's how I can see it.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And that creates like a scarcity and a rarity that you can monetize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
totally. Well, Mark, this has been informative and really enjoyable. I know we've communicated a little bit virtually over, the years, but it's really good to connect with you face to face.
I'm super stoked, man. When you said you wanted to get together and chat, I was floored and honored and nervous because I've been such a fan for so long. You know,
Thanks.
it's I don't think podcasts, as you know, aren't some fringe thing anymore. You know, they're really prevalent, and I think have a real solid place in whatever it is, media. You know, so yeah, I look up to you guys and everything you do. It's really well done.
I really appreciate that. And we owe a thanks to Chris for putting together that GoFundMe as well. And what kind words he wrote. I mean, it was so eloquent and concise.
Josh Mulcoy had a lot to do with that too. I can't leave him out.
Good. And by the way, there was a film that
ahead.
came out last year profiling Mulcoy. I don't know if Vans put it out. It was like a short, maybe 18-minute piece. Do you remember the name of it?
Vans did not put it out. I was on a couple of those trips. Yeah, it was called Within Reach.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it was completely self-produced. Mike Cochran, the filmer, just all his own time, all his own money, everything, all the still photos, me going up to Alaska on my own time, all my own money. And it did and has done, and I think continues to do for what we were expecting really, really well. And we all wish Vans would have been a bigger part of it, but you know, so be it. Like I said, people's hands are tied and people want to do what they want to do, but yeah.
I'll definitely post it with today's show notes just so that people can see it, because not enough people saw it.
Yeah. Thanks,
it's
David.
very
good. It is really good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'll relay the message to the people that actually made it.
Awesome. And I will post, obviously, the link to the GoFundMe and all that sort of stuff with the show notes as well, and direct people
Thanks,
to that.
dude. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Gladly. Well, dude, thanks for taking so much time.
I hope it was interesting, man. I hope people are going to like it. Yeah.
Enjoy this time with your mom too, that you guys get together. That's a rare opportunity also.
It is a rare opportunity. I feel like a full Grom again, like laundry's being folded, dinner's being made.
Amazing.
It is
jealous.
Amazing. It is nice. It's nice.
Enjoy it.
Thanks, brother.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Take care, man.
All right. Bye.